Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
Welcome once again, one and all, to the Books That Make You show. It is time for us to get booky with it here on MyStar95.com. I'm your host, Desiree Duffy, and today we're talking about books that make you envision them as a movie. That's right. When a book is so good, we fall in love with it. We can totally just see it as if it's playing out on the big screen in front of us. It happens all the time. I mean, some of the best films out there were taken from a book or a graphic novel or a comic series. And when we discover a book with characters that we fall in love with and storylines that whisk us away to new worlds, well, that's when we just totally can see it as a movie. And such is the case with the book we're going to talk about today, The Devastation Class. Written by Glen Zipper and Elaine Mongeon, the book found inspiration from their love of sci-fi films like Star Wars, Alien, and The Last Starfighter. It has pulse-pounding action, mind-bending twist, and there's even some Easter eggs in here that we're going to find out more about. The novel and the forthcoming sequels of the Devastation Class trilogy should no doubt delight fans of the genre, science fiction, and adventure. Now, the writers, Glen is a producer of the Oscar-winning documentary Undefeated and the popular Netflix series Dogs, which was greenlit for a second season. Congratulations on that. And as well, we have Elaine. And Elaine is an award-winning filmmaker and director of the short films Good Morning for Warner Brothers Pictures and Swipe to Death for Hulu and the Sundance Institute. And she also served as an associate producer of Magic Mike Extra Extra Large. Hello, Glen and Elaine. Welcome to the show.
Hey there.
All right, let's start by setting the stage. Can you tell us the storyline? Give us the rundown of the Devastation Class.
Well, Devastation Class is a story of a group of young cadets on the flagship battleship of Earth's Alliance fleet. And the story begins at the conclusion of a brutal 9-year war with an alien race called the Kastasi. And because they're entering peacetime, they're now repurposing their warships to go on missions of science and learning. And when they're on one of these missions of science and learning with these cadets in tow, who are just there to be trained, the Kastasi return, the reinvasion force of the Kastasi. And our cadets feel like they're not in capable hands, and they decide to mutiny to take over that ship to save themselves. But their escape transports them to a reality they don't understand, and also puts them in a reality that puts them so far from home they don't even know where to begin. So it sort of becomes Star Trek meets Land of the Lost at that point.
Okay, is that what you mean by a reality they don't understand? Because that sounds like it could be anything. I mean, are they floating in some kind of ethereal world, or is that one of the things that you're going to keep from me? Like, I don't know what that is.
We'll tell you a little bit. So it's still space. They're still in space, but nothing adds up. Sort of everything that they think should be up is down. You know, everything they think should be right is wrong. And it takes them quite some time to figure out what's really going on. And once they do figure out what's going on, it's far more terrifying than they ever could have imagined.
Oh, exciting. So this is scary as well as being sci-fi and speculative at the same time.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay, tell me a little bit about some of the characters, because you have these cadets. Is this their coming of age story? Are they bonding? Are they getting along? Are they not getting along?
Elaine?
In a sense. So the book is actually told in 4 different points of view. So each chapter is told from a different perspective from 4 different characters. Our 2 protagonists are JD and Viv, and they are our 2 lead cadets. They're best friends. They're both following in the footsteps of their war hero parents, so they have big shoes to fill. And then we have our character of Nicholas, who's a bit of a mystery at the beginning, and our character of Liko, who is a student on the ship, so that we could have the student's perspective. And the cadets they've all been together for quite some time in training. So the cadets are a very tight-knit group, and there's a bit of a divide between the cadets and the students, because the cadets clearly have the upper hand on the ship just because of their military standing.
Tell me a little bit about the inspiration, because I'm getting Starship Troopers, I'm getting Star Trek, I'm getting all of those wonderful classics that we know and love. Tell us a little bit, both of you, about the inspiration that went into this story.
Well, the core inspiration is one that'll probably surprise a lot of people, because it's not a science fiction inspiration. It's actually a film from 1981 called Taps. You're familiar with that film. For those who are watching or listening and weren't familiar with the film, it had a cast of little-known actors at the time, but those actors went on to be people like Tom Cruise and Sean Penn and Timothy Hutton and Giancarlo Esposito. The biggest star in the movie at the time was George C. Scott, and it's a story of a military academy that's about to be closed down and torn down to make way for a row of new condominiums. And the academy is so important and so inextricable from the identities of these military cadets that they essentially mutiny and take over the academy and won't let the bulldozers in. And to pretty horrible results. And so Elaine and I had been talking for a while about telling a story about teenagers in space. And we said, well, what if we took that overlay from TAPS and we set it in space? And then obviously there's derivative elements to it that do take into account things like Star Trek that we loved and Star Wars that we loved, and the wish fulfillment of something like The Last Starfighter, right? That when you're home playing a video game, what you're really doing is auditioning to be a fighter pilot in an alien force to take on another alien force that's trying to extinguish humanity or another civilization. So when we put all those things into the pot and mixed it up, we came up with Devastation Class.
I can tell you're a gamer. What do you play?
I'm not a gamer.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, okay.
Kid. I mean, like when I grew up in the 80s, so I was actually in an arcade and I'd play things like, Donkey Kong and Pac-Man and Galaga. But, as you get older and these games get more and more sophisticated, my brain just doesn't move that fast. I literally feel like if I like someone, tries to get me to, play on like a Nintendo Switch, I feel like I'm about to have a seizure. Like I just can't keep up with it. So I think Elaine's the same way. But, I actually want to. But I'm trying to find like an ambassador, like some young person, or at least someone younger than me, who's really good at it, that is patient, and will treat me like their grandfather or their dad, and say, "All right, you're not going to be good at this, but I'm going to show you how to do this. And I'm going to be patient when you're making mistakes, and eventually you'll get the hang of it, and then I can go off and waste even more of my time doing something when I should be writing."
Yeah, exactly. It's a great waste of time. I recommend Destiny for you. I think you might like that one if you like the space stuff. I play Call of Duty just because I like to shoot things up. It's a great stress reliever, but I totally understand.
Well, I do things in real life.
Yeah. I hear you. Now, this is an interesting quote. I want to read this from Seth Grahame-Smith. He's the author of Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, one of my favorites, by the way. And he says it is a starry-eyed imagination of Star Trek with the introspective heart and humor of a John Hughes film. It's a total blast. And I remember John Hughes films from back in the day, too. So you're also inspired from that and from, adding a little bit of comedy into it as well, right?
Yeah, we definitely like to have a sense of humor in everything that we write together. And also, John Hughes was very good about allowing his teenage characters to not be dumbed down and to really have a sense of nuance and really strong character development. And so we were certainly inspired by all of his films. Specifically, I would say The Breakfast Club is probably number one. And we love his work.
I want to find out what it's like writing together. And have you written together before, or is this your first time?
So Glen and I used to be a couple, actually. And we should mention that Battlestar Galactica was also a key inspiration. In fact, on our first date turned into an overnight binge watch of Battlestar Galactica, the Ron Moore version. That's how nerdy. What?
It's not embarrassing at all.
Yeah, not embarrassing and not nerdy at all.
No, not at all. Just go ahead. Do you want to show my childhood pictures now? Okay, go on. Sorry.
So I don't even remember the question. What was the question?
How we started writing together, and you were talking about how we used to be a couple.
Oh, yeah. So
that made me lose my train of thought too. Like the idea that we were a couple is probably really, painful and traumatic. But go on.
Extremely traumatic. Yeah. So we were actually, because we were a couple, we were spending a lot of our time together, obviously, and we both had day jobs when we first came up with this idea. So when we started collaborating, all of our free time was spent sort of spitballing ideas, talking about character development, talking about, the things that make our characters tick. And we lived together for 4 years. So on our dining room wall, we actually had all of our story beats lined up, hanging right in the dining room. And, a lot of our brunches on the weekends were spent talking things through. But with respect to the actual process, we don't sit at we never sat at the dining room table with our laptops back to back like a game of Battleship. We actually would write separately. So one person would take a pass at a handful of chapters and then send them to the other person. And then we go back and forth until until we were both happy or happy enough.
Well, you definitely threw out a big matzo ball saying that you used to be a couple, but I can tell that I will just leave that go. But I am interested. So if this gets picked up for production, will you continue then to work together, or do you feel that you would have other writers take it over? Like how closely do you want to follow your baby all the way through?
I think, we've talked a lot about that, and I think we're very open to letting someone else take the reins because, in any creative pursuit, we came up from the world of film and television, you become myopic. As a producer, a lot of times, a director will send me a cut of a film or an episode of a TV show. And they're really excited about it, and I watch it, and it's just not working for me. And 9 times out of 10, it's because they've gotten too close to it, and they can't see the forest for the trees. And we're not immune to that. And we've written a novel, and we're about to write the 2 sequels. We're in the process of writing the 2 sequels. And that's what we've concentrated on. And, in a sense, in building those worlds, we've locked ourselves in. We see it in a certain way. Those pathways in our brains the mold has set. And then if you were to bring in someone from the outside, they can explode it a bit and make it bigger and add inflections to it and add layers to it in a way that we probably wouldn't. So I think, what we've concluded for ourselves is if someone came along in the discussions that we're having now about with various partners who want to turn it into a movie or TV series, if they really want us to do it, if it's only worth it to them, if they could say, this screenplay was written by the same people who wrote the book, we won't turn that deal down if that's necessary to get it done. But I think our preference is if someone else will take the reins from this point forward for the film and TV adaptation, and we'll be there to help them if they need to pick our brain.
We would also like to be involved as producers, though, because we are both filmmakers, and we would love to be able to contribute to, casting ideas and ideas about, how certain things would look. That would be extremely fun for us.
Now, I can tell, too, because, Elaine, your eyes kind of lit up when I asked about the characters. I have a feeling that maybe you contributed to a lot of the character developing. So does that mean that you've already cast this to some degree in your head? Do you know who some of your main players would be?
No, not really, only because by the time this could be made into something, our characters are young, right? So they would probably be too old by the time it came to fruition. The one character that we really had an archetype in mind for was Dr. Sam Fuller, and the appearance-wise and energetically, we kind of based him on Dave Grohl of Foo Fighters fame. Glenn,
I can dig it.
To add to that?
Yeah, well, I think I could tell part of a really interesting story, something funny that happened, which was the book was covered in Variety, and in that article we got asked the same question, and I, without Elaine's permission or buy-in, I mentioned someone that I thought might be really cool to play Viv, and then I sort of forgot about it, and then a few days later I got an email from that actress's manager, and a few days later I was on a Zoom with that actress. And, it's way premature, certainly not, it's not something that she said that she's wanting to do or would ever commit to do, but it was a fun conversation. It just shows you in the world that we live in now, how quickly your worlds can collapse on one another. And so that's another reason why we want to be really careful about who we say we would want to play one of these leads. But I think Elaine's, identified the real issue, which is, if we started developing a script tomorrow, it takes a year or two to get it right, and then further pre-production elements that need to be endeavored upon. So by the time we were ready, whoever was appropriate to age-wise to play those parts today might be too old by then, because these characters are already 18 years old, and people change quite a bit and mature quite a bit, from 18 to 21 or 21 to 24.
The other thing that was important to us also was not being incredibly specific about the appearance of our characters, because we really want our readers to be able to envision themselves in these characters, right? So with the exception of a few people being very specific about where they're from, and maybe like the color of somebody's hair, we really tried to be as open as possible so that people could really be open-minded when envisioning them.
Yeah, and to further hang the lantern on that, I think it's also a criticism of the book, and some of the things that we've seen where people say, oh, they didn't bother to really, or put in the effort to describe these characters clearly, but there's an intention behind that. And then those armchair critics really annoy me, to be honest. And I've had to deal with a lot of critics on the film and TV side of things. So I'm not, I'm not precious, and I'm not easily insulted by a criticism of the book, but it feels to me like book critics are a whole different creature. There's a bit of a velvet rope around the book world that there isn't around TV and film. And whenever you try and do something a little bit different, it's met with resistance. And it's also assigned with some sort of less admirable intent. It's like, oh, you had to do it this way because you were lazy, or you had to do it this way because you're not good enough or smart enough. No, that's actually not true. We did that because we wanted you, when you read this, we want you to picture yourself in Viv if you identify with her. And if, I'm looking at you and you have really beautiful blonde hair, and if we described her as, having, a buzz cut or shocking red hair, no, that's really disconnecting you from that character, and we didn't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, in the bookish world, there are a lot of critics, just like in TV. And I would say, too, because do you consider your audience, do you consider this YA, young adult?
Yes and no. We, these are young characters, and we think a YA audience, will respond to it. But I didn't want to, and nor did Elaine, want to write a book that sort of restricted itself to any one audience. Who goes to see a Marvel movie? Is it just young kids? No. Is it just comic book fans? No. Is it just white people? Is it just black people? No. Everyone goes to see it. And everyone, if you bring a certain, passion to the movie theater with you, if you're sort of a comic book nerd or you're a sci-fi nerd, I'm using nerd in the most flattering sense, then you're going to lean into those elements of it. But there's nothing about that movie, about those movies that sort of puts up a wall and says, well, if you're not this type of audience, if you're not into this sort of thing, then this movie isn't for you. And we want to do the same thing with the book. This book is for everybody. And in a sense, Elaine and I were talking about this yesterday, this book is a bit of junk food. Like, we're not trying to tell you that this book is vegetables. Well, we hid some vegetables in it, but this book is Doritos. And I feel like, some people, like some of the deep book people, and I don't mean to insult anyone, but some of the deep book people, if they don't suffer a little bit in a book, if they're not a little bit bored somewhere across the book, they feel like they haven't earned their stripes in reading the book. And we don't want you to be bored for a second. We want you to eat, you open a bag of Doritos and you say, I'm just going to have, 10 chips and then I'm going to roll up the bag. No, we want you to eat the whole bag.
I hear you. Yeah. And I think too, sometimes if people mash up genres a little bit, or if they're not true to it being YA or NA or romance or whatever it's supposed to be, that's where a lot of times you'll get the critics coming in, especially those librarians. Watch out for those librarians. That's all I got to say. Tell me a little bit about the theme. So I understand this is Doritos. This isn't health food, so to speak. But do you have any overarching themes that you've developed in the book?
Yeah, I mean, survival is certainly one of them. Our characters are battling life and death stakes from an enemy they never saw coming. We could draw some parallels to our current state of the world right now. And we wrote this before the pandemic hit. And so oddly, we were, there are some interesting parallels with the book now, considering the state of the world is what I'll say. But, there's some, battling of inner fear, overcoming fear is a big theme in the book. What else we got, Glenn?
I would say, I think probably the most obvious vegetable that's hidden in the junk food is, even before COVID, when you look at the climate crisis, when you look at the fight for racial and social justice, it's all these old people who are making the decisions and creating the rules, right? And I'm getting pretty old, not old yet, I'm in my 40s, but people younger than me and generation millennials and Generation Z, they're all having to adhere to rules that have been written by people that are going to be dead by the time that the consequences of those rules are going to be affecting the people who are still living on this planet. And what we're seeing, you saw it in the Black Lives Matter protests and other protests, the Women's March and everything, where younger generations are saying, you know what? No, we're going to take control now. And if we have to break rules, if we have to at times even break the law, we're going to do it if that's what's required for our survival. And that's what the characters do in Devastation Class, particularly the cadets, when they say, look, we can follow the rules here, and let the adults stay in control of this ship. But if we do that, we're probably dead. So, screw the consequences. We're taking over the ship and they could throw us in the brig later. But job number one is we've got to survive. And so that's definitely, I think, probably the core theme that runs through the book from beginning to end.
Now, you've mentioned the Easter eggs that are in this book. What exactly do you mean by that? Are there things that people can find and then they discover something online, or how exactly are you guys doing that?
The more Easter eggs that
Are you?
That's a little something they planted that has a reference point.
Hey, Glenn.
Hey.
Glenn, can you hear me?
I can.
Glenn? Okay, I'm just going to give you a second to catch up because your bandwidth, you're kind of robot voice guy right now. We'll do a little pickup there.
Okay, how about now?
No, let's give it a little bit more. Let's give it just a little bit more. Go ahead and talk for me just a little bit.
How about now?
I think that's better. So go ahead and if you can, just answer that question, just starting from scratch, and hopefully we'll find a nice, clean place to edit.
The question. What was the question again?
About the Easter eggs.
Easter eggs, right. So there's certainly a lot of Easter eggs in Devastation Class. There's a few here and there that are just references to pop culture things that people might identify, like going back to the Marvel movies, like when Captain America goes, I got that one. There's a few things in here where people might come across them and be like, I got that one. But more often than not, the Easter eggs that are in the book are Easter eggs that will pay off in subsequent installments of the trilogy, where you see something in the book and you say, why are they highlighting this? Like, why is this here? There must be a reason. And then when you get to book 2, that small thing that you either noticed, and sometimes things you didn't even notice or you just thought were innocuous, will turn out to be huge things in book 2. And there's 1 or 2 things in book 1 that people will definitely notice, but think they're there for one reason. And then when we get to book 2, they're going to go, oh my God, blows my mind what that really was there for and the consequences that are going to flow from it. So really excited about that.
That is fun. I love it when you got like just this little thing that pops up at some point, and it's like this thread that just kind of lies underneath, and then all of a sudden it comes out at a later time, and you're like, wow, I never saw that coming.
Exactly.
I love that. So this is a trilogy. So when can readers expect book 2 to come out?
Depends how much coffee I can get my hands on.
Same.
We're a good measure through book 2, and so probably a little bit more than a year after the release of book 1. Book 1 came out just last September. This September passed. So yeah, a year give or take, we'd say. For the
it also depends on how the industry is doing, because we were really lucky that our book came out on the scheduled release date, but there have been a lot of publishers that, because of COVID and because of problems at the actual physical printers, a lot of books, they had to push their release dates because they were behind. One publisher I read about had 50 titles that they had to push because there was one printer who had a COVID infection at the actual printers. And so then they gave it to another company to handle. And then there was a huge backlog. So, obviously we'll have to see what's happening with the publishing industry at the time of the release of book 2 as well.
Yeah. Well, and I have to imagine too, the movie industry, because they start filming again, then they don't, and there's new rules and restrictions. And with that said, would you guys consider, I don't know, animation or something that's a little bit more, outside of what you originally thought as a way to get this out there?
Nope.
No, probably not.
Glenn has his mind made up.
He sure does.
Elaine, I understand. Okay. I understand now.
Well, the thing is that our passion is with live action and always has been. And this book actually started as a TV concept originally. So we went from creating it as a TV show concept. We had written a few scripts in a series, in a season 1 Bible, and then we decided to write it as a book. So we've always had live action in our brains from the start, and it would be royal disappointment.
You're like, no, it's not going to be animated. It's not going to be a puppet show, Desiree. Just stop. But what you did is really smart, because you're right. In the film industry, they want to know that there's a lot to pull from. They don't want to just read the one script anymore. If you've got a book, then actually your book series, that essentially becomes your Bible for them, because they can pull from all of this that you've already put the work into.
That's right.
Right. Exactly.
So tell us where people can find each of you online, your social media, find the website, and obviously find the book.
The book can be found on Amazon, bookshop.org, most online booksellers. And, if you want to support your local independent bookstore, you can ask them if they have it in stock, or you can ask them to order it. Our website is devastationclass.com. And there we have links to all the places you can buy the book, and also a lot of fun press that we've gotten, and other tidbits as well. And I'm on Instagram at Elaine Mongeon, ELAINEMONGEON, and on Twitter at E_Mongeon.
Excellent. Glenn?
And that you finally got Elaine to give me her contact information.
Now he's going to stalk you, right, Elaine? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Thanks a lot, Desiree.
I'm on Twitter. I'm at Zipper, and that's ZIPPER. And on Instagram, I'm at Glen Zipper with one N. And also, if anyone wants a signed book plate, we're happy to send those out and sign them for folks. So just reach out to us through the website, and we'll take care of that.
Wonderful. Well, I'm not going to say it, but I kind of have to say it. You guys are a great team. So I look forward to reading the book, reading the series, and seeing it one day on the big screen, because I'm excited about that as you are. Thank you, Elaine and Glenn, for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having us.
You bet. You bet. And thank you, everybody, for being here today on the Books That Make You show. You can find out more about us on booksthatmakeyou.com. That is our website. Plus, we're on Instagram. Thank you. Yes, hold that up. Hold that up. Perfect. Beautiful. Beautiful. You have a great website, too. I like the stars and everything.
Thank you.
You bet. You bet. Once again, that's booksthatmakeyou.com. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we're on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel. Until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.